Hey guys, I'm Natasha. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma at 23, and it changed my life. It all came to a pause. I can't imagine getting that diagnosis at 14, and that's what my next guest went through, Lottie Bildirici. Today, she is a 6-time marathoner, an Ironman competitor. She runs on Veggies, and she's a friend. And if you follow her on Instagram, running on Veggies, you know she covers a lot of ground. That's what we did in our next level conversation. Lottie Bildirici, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I love having you here. You know, you've run 6 marathons, 1 Ironman, multiple half Ironmans, cancer survivor. I mean, when I think of someone who's next level, I think of you.
Oh my God, you're giving me the chills. Thank you.
What was it like to run an Ironman? So just explain what that is, first of all the components.
Of an Ironman?
Yeah.
So an Ironman is a triathlon, but it's a long distance triathlon. So it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. And I decided to do it because I was sharing my cancer story for the first time, and I wanted to do it in a way that I could give back. And it happened to fall on the same weekend that I was diagnosed 10 years prior. So it was like, big monumental moment for me, just to show 10 years ago, I was in a much different place, and what you could do if you're willing to work for something.
Of all of those different segments, which one would you say was the hardest?
I would say swimming is not something I grew up doing.
Right.
It's really difficult, but honestly, the bike is the hardest because you're on the bike for so long. You're on the bike for 8 hours. So the cycling was definitely the hardest part.
Would you do it again?
I don't think so. I'm done.
One and done?
Yeah.
I mean, just doing one is quite an achievement.
It was enough, yeah.
I want to go back because we've been friends for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We first met last year when I was training for my first ever marathon, the New York City Marathon, and you showed me how to stretch outside, just the basic things that are so important for just getting out there and getting to even start a marathon. And then I found out that we had the same cancer. Same kind of cancer, a major trauma bond.
Yes.
I was 23 when I was diagnosed. You were 14 years old. I have to imagine at 14, did you have any idea of fully grasp what it was that you were going through?
I don't think so. I was kind of left in the dark in a good way because I was so young and I didn't understand what the diagnosis meant, but I knew I had the good Hodgkin's, which I was happy about. Right. But I still had to go through treatment. I still had to have chemo. I lost all my hair, radiation. I pretty much missed out of my whole freshman year of high school. So it was really difficult, but I always like to say those hard things that happen to you in life are a big part of who you are, and it's a big part of who I am. And in a way, I'm really happy I had that experience at such a young age because it taught me to be resilient, and I channel that in every aspect of my life.
These are really big topics to deal with when you're 14. I mean, mortality. Did you ever think that you weren't going to make it?
I don't know. I remember I was at the doctor's once, and they were like, so when you're 18, you're going to have to come back. And I was like, I'm not going to be 18. I didn't let myself get there, but I kind of knew that, cancer means death. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about what I do now and talking about it, because there's a lot of stigma around cancer. And I think now people are changing the conversation. Look at you and everything that you built. It's not a death sentence anymore.
Right.
And, and I think that was my idea of it.
Yeah.
When I was younger.
So you really thought that you weren't going to make it to 18. I mean, that's such a morbid thought at such a young age.
Yeah. And I think I just didn't know any better. I didn't know what cancer meant, what Hodgkin's meant.
Yeah. 14.
Yeah.
It is interesting, at least for my story with Hodgkin's. I really had to advocate for myself. I had to talk. I had to fight with 2 doctors. I really want you to do an ultrasound. And one of them said, sweetie, you're going to get bumps and bruises all over your body. You don't need to come in for every single one of them.
Wow.
That's me at 23.
Yeah.
At 14, how did you find your tumor?
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because I was having a conversation with some friends recently, and I was saying how it's so natural for me to advocate for myself at doctors, and most people don't. They don't ask questions. They don't research themselves, and I think it comes natural to me because I grew up going to so many doctor's appointments. I found a bump on my neck, and I went to the pediatrician, and she kind of knew it was something but didn't really scare me, and she gave me antibiotics, and she's like, if it doesn't go away in a week, come back. And she made me the appointment before the week was up, and I went and I got a CAT scan, and it was very clear that I had some type of lymphoma.
Yeah. So you found something. You went to your parents.
I went to my mom. I was like, oh, I have a bump on my neck. I was
Yeah.
like playing with my necklace, and my mom's like not an alarmist, so it's funny that she like ran to the doctor to take me there.
Yeah.
But that was the only symptom that I had, and I'm very grateful that I found that.
That's great that you spoke up. I mean, I feel like at
Yeah.
that age you might even ignore just bumps on yourself.
Yeah,
right?
So many symptoms. I know towards the end, right before I got treatment, I was having night sweats, but I really didn't have many symptoms. Did you have a lot of symptoms?
I had no other symptoms other than I had that pain down the left side of my body, and it was like this pain that was a shooting pain that felt almost like nervous kind of pain, like a nerve shooting. But that was the only symptom that I had. I didn't feel anything else. I wasn't having night sweats or sudden loss of weight, anything like that. But it was enough to feel the lump right here on my collarbone that just
I had
felt
the same
off. Yeah. So to go through something so monumental like a cancer diagnosis, survive it at such a young age, I mean, my goodness, that kind of just like, that sets the limit, right? And where do you go from there? I mean, you've got such a perspective on life. How did you get into running?
Yeah, so it is because of my cancer diagnosis, and I think it's also like all I knew at such a young age. I only knew how to be resilient. I only knew how to go through hard things, and I took it with me. And my family, like when I was going through it, and they never felt bad for me, so I never felt bad for myself.
Okay.
And I learned to be like tough because of it, but that was kind of the attitude around it. It was a funny story that we always like to say. I was treated at Sloan Kettering, and I went in for chemo or blood work, and my mom drove in. We pulled up to the parking lot, and I was like pale as a ghost. I was like not doing well, and the parking lot attending was like, "Do you need a wheelchair?" And my mom's like, "You do not need a wheelchair. You are going to push yourself." And you know those hospitals, you have to like walk a mile to get to where you need to go. And I pushed myself, and I got upstairs, and they looked at me, and they took blood work, and I needed a blood transfusion because my platelets were so low for the first time. And I looked at my mom, and I was like, push yourself, you know? So
and you're 14 years old.
That was the attitude of like, push yourself.
Right.
With good and bad, but that's how, you know, like when I think about running and all the things that I do, it's like that inside voice, like push yourself, continue, keep going. And it was instilled in me at such a young age.
Did you grow up running?
No. So I didn't grow up playing any sports. I didn't grow up running. We didn't have after school programs like that. And then my senior year of high school, a bunch of kids were going to Disney World to raise money for a local cancer center. And I'm like, oh, this will be great to, you know, give back. I was kind of lost afterwards. I felt like this happened to me. How am I going to give back?
Right.
I was like, this is a great opportunity. I'll go to Disney with my friends. I went to Disney, did the half marathon, and I loved every aspect of running. I loved like having a goal, training for it, community, health, and I just fell in love with it, and then signed up for half marathons and just got the running bug.
The half marathon at Disney had to be super fun.
It was so fun.
Did you get to ride any rides while you were running? Because you do that in the marathon in Disney, I heard.
You ride the
rides?
You can.
Yes, you can hop off of the route and you can actually ride a ride. Yes.
No, I was like focused on finishing. I don't know. I think they had some Disney characters there, but I was like finishing there. Like we got to go to the parks and everything before. My sister did it. My mom came out. It was a really fun experience.
I mean, what a fantastic mindset to have too at such a young age, being like, I want to give back after beating cancer.
Yeah, I felt like I'm very spiritual, and I felt like this happened to me for a reason, and I wanted to know why. I wanted to like figure out my purpose. we all want connection, we all want purpose, and I think that's what I was looking for. And when I started to run, it gave me some of that, but then I also was like, I had chemo radiation and I had no choice of what I'm putting in my body, and now let me be empowered by the choices that I'm making when it comes to food. So everything kind of connected organically, but running was something that really helped me, I think, recover spiritually.
Do you think also it helps you regain control? Because when you go through chemo, it's such a loss of control. I mean, everything in your life gets turned upside down. So controlling what you're able to put inside your body, what you eat, how you run, how you exercise, is it exercising that level of control too?
100%. It's like I could focus on, you get what you put into running. I always say that. It's like the most honest, truest thing you could be doing. And I felt like it was, a way for me to feel in control of my life again and kind of take charge.
So you run one half marathon, you run another one, and then you end up making a career out of running, which not a lot of people can do, but you did it. How did you get into that?
It kind of just happened to me in a way. I always say, like, when you're passionate about something, it shows and people want to be around you because of it. So I started basically, I was my senior year of high school. I had to get an internship. It was part of the criteria of, finishing school. And I loved music at the time. I listened to music when I was going through treatment. I listened to music while I was running. And I got this great internship at a record label in Dumbo. And I remember, like, waking up at 5 a.m. to get my run in, baking cookies, bringing it to the office, and just thinking, like, that's my favorite part of the day.
I love that.
This is not my favorite part of the day. Like, corporate life is not for me. And I started my Instagram in 2012, running on Veggies, same name.
Yep.
I got a lot of professional athletes started to follow me. I was just posting my recipes, just like what I like to eat, my running, and people weren't making a career out of Instagram at the time.
Right.
And it kind of just organically.
So you kind of got into it early, like the beginning
of it, and I was not looking for a career out of it. I didn't know that you could make a career out of it. Right. But then I had the opportunity to work with professional athletes with nutrition. I got to work with really great brands, and I saw, a path forward in that.
I always love your videos. You make running look so easy. We
love running together.
Yeah, we've run together. But you're always like, okay, everyone, let's run 20 miles today. And you're like, okay, mile 1, mile 2, and you show your gels and everything. And it's, you make it look so easy. But what does your day-to-day look like in terms of training? Like, what are you training for next?
So I love running.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I think that's why maybe it seems easy, but there are definitely moments that are not easy. There's nothing easy about running 20 miles.
Right.
It never gets easy. But that's what I also like. I like the challenge. I just did the New York Marathon. I had a 70-minute course PR, which I was like super, super excited about.
I mean, I was looking at your post. I mean, you completely shattered your PR. You did so good.
Yeah, it was a homecoming.
Yeah.
New York is incredible. I really was able to channel everything I was going through in my life and like lay it out on the course and feel my strength. I think, when you go through cancer, you go through anything in life, it's like you want to remind yourself how strong you could be, and running has always reminded myself of that.
Yeah.
So, I loved doing the marathon now. I did London also this year. I have my eye on Chicago. I'm hoping to do it this year as well. So
do that in October.
Yeah.
How do you keep your because your pace is like so consistent throughout the marathon, just kind of looking at your splits. How do you push yourself? How do you keep yourself going?
It's the marathon is a test of patience. You have to sit back for a long time and feel. I think a lot of people go out way too quickly. They get excited with the crowds and the people, and then they get to the Queensboro Bridge, and it's like, yeah,
that's right, because you get hit with like a wall of people who are cheering you on First Avenue.
Yeah, you did it. You know what it's like. That marathon is so difficult in so many ways, but I knew what the course was like, so I really made sure to, just practice hill training and also, hold back for the first 20 miles. And then I thought I was going to have another gear at mile 20. I was like, all right. And then I was like, I got nothing. I just got to keep
I
this
hit
pace.
A wall in the Bronx.
Yeah,
that
the Bronx was pretty bad.
Really tough. Let's talk about your cookbook,
Yeah.
Running on Veggies, which same name as the Instagram
Keeping
handle.
it on brand, yeah.
Keeping it on brand. And I found it interesting. I heard on another podcast that you were on that there was a publishing company that approached you. So how did the cookbook come to be?
Yeah, so I think it was always a dream of mine to have a cookbook. I think it was like a lofty goal that I would have. But when I was maybe 22, 23, Penguin Random House reached out to me to write a cookbook. And it felt like super overwhelming. I wasn't really, so many other things were happening with my career. I kind of just like thought about it. I was like, okay, maybe one day. And we always kept in touch, and I kept their contact and stuff. And then a few years later, it was like, I think it's time to write this book. And they had reached out to me again about writing a book.
Did they find you on social media? Is that how they found you?
Me on social media. I went to their offices, and then I was like, okay, if I want to do this, I should hire a literary agent. I hired an agent. We ended up pitching it to multiple publishing houses, but we went with Penguin Random House. They're one of the best publishing houses in the world.
And they wanted you. They kept reaching out too.
Yeah, they were persistent. And I put all my heart, all my recipes in there. I wrote it over the pandemic, which was really nice when everything went, nothing was certain. I was able to focus on this and put my heart into it. And there's over 100 recipes in the book. And I also feature professional athlete recipes in the book as well, because I've worked with so many athletes over the years. So it was really cool to incorporate them into the book.
Are you formulating their meal plans? How are you working with them?
Yeah, so it's usually around the training cycle. So I've worked with 2 professional athletes leading up to the Olympic trials.
Wow.
And it's really amazing to see they need to improve like so little. Like I'm running a 70-minute PR. They're trying to like shave 30 seconds off,
They're the elite of the elite,
Yeah, and every little thing counts and matters.
Yeah.
And when you introduce nutrition, and I also realized like they don't have access to this. They don't know. It's a very, nutrition is very up and coming and new in a lot of ways. And they didn't use it as a tool until recently. So being able to see how they transform when they clean up their diet and they start to use food to help their performance was really cool to see.
Lottie, they say abs are made in the kitchen.
They are.
Is it true? I mean, how much of it is nutrition versus actually going out and working out?
You really can't outrun a bad diet. And I always remind people that. And I always remind people, like, we're running because we want to feel good, and you want to eat because you want to feel good. So I think there's a lot of restrictive eating, and there's a lot of eating disorders and things associated with food and the athlete, the young female athlete. So I'm very cautious of how I talk about nutrition and food to young athletes, especially women. But I would say, like, look at food and how could it help your performance. And once you start to look at it that way, I think your mindset shifts. It's like, how is this fueling my run, fueling my recovery, fueling my performance?
Speaking of fueling and recovery, it is interesting. I've always been known, I'm from Texas. I eat a lot of meat too. And I think that when you think of recovery, you think of building muscle, you think of a meat-based protein, right? Chicken or steak or some kind of beef or meat or something like that. But you're completely plant-based, and I feel like that breaks the mold in some ways. I mean, you're talking about recovering with veggies, running on veggies. Why'd you decide to do vegetables?
Yeah, so I got into nutrition when I was in high school, when I was running, and I had really bad eczema, and I had other issues, and I cut out meat, I cut out refined sugar, flours, and I just felt so much better eating this way. I'm a big believer, like, everyone eats something else. I don't push this way onto anyone, but I do believe everyone should be eating a plant-forward diet. So a lot of the recipes in my book could be used for chicken, for steak, whatever protein you like, but I always recommend, like, the majority of your plate should be plants. It reduces inflammation. It's not as hard on the body to digest. So if you are going to eat meat, more of a sprinkling of meat. But in
moderation.
Yeah, people overdo the meat. And
Did you see a big change in your body when you cut out meat?
Yes, and I felt like it was mostly my eczema and my skin that I saw the biggest change with. But I'm also like, maybe I would eat it again. I'm not like super strict about it. I eat fish and eggs, so I'm not completely vegan. But I do this all so that I feel good. So I just try to remind myself that.
And how does it help with your running? Like, do you find that you have to supplement the protein elsewhere? How does that work?
I think there's so many easy ways to get in plant protein. Like, I have a protein smoothie here that I made. I use like protein powder, which has 20 to 30 grams of protein, eggs, fish, tofu, beans. I just try to like keep a nice variety.
I think your recipes, because I have your cookbook, it sits in my kitchen, and I love your recipes because, first of all, they're delicious, and you don't compromise on flavor in everything that you do.
Yeah, and I don't think like people think eating healthy means like grilled chicken and broccoli, and I'm like, it doesn't need to look like that.
Right.
I think cooking and eating, like I love to cook and I love to eat, so that's why like that's where this came from. So I want to show people like it doesn't need to be boring, it could be fun, and I think the best skill and tool we could have as an athlete is learning how to cook our own food.
And your mom is really big into cooking too. Yeah. She's got her own Instagram following as well.
Shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to your mom and your name, Lottie. You're named after your grandma. So talk about just your family and how close you are with them.
Yeah, my heritage. I grew up in the kitchen. My mom's an amazing cook. She also has her Instagram where she's posting her recipes. And I was named after her mother, Lottie, and I'm the only one named after her. And she was an amazing cook. She would feed the mailman. She would feed anyone coming into her house. And she passed away when I was 6 years old, so I didn't really get to know her. But everyone tells me that I'm true to my namesake.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah. And it's really nice to pass that on to the next generation and continue to host, I show my love through food and continue to do that.
I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I mean, you've really carved out a niche for yourself. Did you think that your life would go from 14-year-old Lottie? Do you think?
I would never think that I would be sitting here with you. This would be so surreal. And I just I think we could all be really hard on ourselves. So I just try to put things in perspective and look back and look at the career I was able to build out of doing something that I love. And I don't take it for granted because I know that a lot of people have a hard time like searching for their purpose and building a career out of it. And, none of it is easy, but it's like it's always worth it when I'm walking down the street and someone's like, I love your cookbook, I make this recipe, and just seeing people being inspired to run and bettering themselves through the work that I'm able to do.
Do you feel like you found your purpose so young?
I think we're always continuing to find our purpose, don't you feel? I think it's like a continued journey. But I think sharing stories is very important to inspire and shed light on things. So I'm very like passionate about sharing my story. For so long I didn't share my story. For the longest time I had my Instagram account. I didn't share my story until my 10-year anniversary of being diagnosed because I felt like it was my identity. And I don't know if you could relate to this.
Interesting,
but I didn't want to be the girl who had cancer.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I was like, I made this whole other identity running on Veggies. But then I would go on podcasts and I would talk about like how I started to cook and nutrition, and I wouldn't share this huge part of my life. And the podcast, I remember she told me, she's like, what are you scared of? After the interview, when I told her I had been sick, and I was like, I don't know what I'm scared of anymore. And I know that like the young version of me would have been so inspired to see someone like me now making a career out of doing what they love, overcoming cancer, and it's not a death sentence. And I felt like super passionate after that to just like find my voice and show people that this isn't who you are.
Yeah, it doesn't define you.
Yes.
What's your advice for someone who's going through cancer right now and watching this and looking at you and being like, oh my gosh, she ran 6 marathons going for her 7th?
I think that, whenever you're going through something difficult, it feels like it's never going to end. And it doesn't, it's hard to see a light on the other side. So I would just like remind people there's light on the other side. This isn't forever, and you're in control so much more than you think you are. And choose happiness. The little things that you could do to make yourself happy make a big impact on your overall like health and everyday life.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the mindset that you have, to just I think like just run every single day and do that. I mean, beyond just like surviving cancer, I think the mindset that you have is so powerful.
Continue to run. But I do it because it makes me feel good. And I whether it's running, cycling, strength training, it's my like mental health check-in for the day, and it's something that I continue to do. And I'm very type A, very like on a schedule, like you know where to find me on a Monday. Like I love like consistency and training, and I love having a purpose and a goal. So when I'm not training for something, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm running for fun. Like,
yeah,
I like being goal oriented.
Okay, so what's next for you?
What's next? Hopefully the Chicago Marathon coming up in October next year. And I want to continue doing what I love and like sharing recipes, working with different brands online, being able to continue to inspire people to run, maybe host more events around the city, host more runs.
Is it scary to kind of be doing something that's like your own brand on your own in a way?
It's just like the only job I've ever had in my entire life.
It's amazing though.
I don't know if I would be able to do something else. Like I was thinking about it recently, like maybe I want to get a job in marketing or do something else, but it wouldn't fulfill me the same way.
Right.
And I think like I want to continue to do this. And yeah, I like being my own boss.
Where can people buy your cookbook?
Wherever books are sold. You can find it everywhere. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, The Strand, on my website, runonveg.com.
All right, Lottie, you were my first guest.
Oh my God, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
This was fun.
It was great to talk to you.
Yeah.